Hey everyone, my name is Cindy Davis. I'm the Content Director for AV Technology, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this webinar today. Higher Ed UC&C, how to ensure campus-wide meeting and public space work like in the enterprise. So before we begin, I have a couple of housekeeping points. One of the things I'm really excited about with this platform is how we've now offer closed captioning. To turn it on, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen. And as always, these webinars are so much better when you engage as well. So make sure you ask plenty of questions in the questions tab, not the chat tab, and we'll answer them throughout the hour. Also important, the chat tab is where you'll go if you have any technical issues during the session, but a quick browser refresh should get rid of any of the usual tech gremlins. And then also make sure also on the right-hand side, check out the Docs tab. That's where you're going to find some information from our sponsors. And if you want to watch this webinar again and again, or share it with a colleague, it'll be available on demand in a day or two. So next, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Barco and Sony, because without them, we wouldn't be able to present this great content. So thank you. And next, I want to invite our panel to the stage and start off by asking everyone to introduce themselves and the company or university they work with as it relates to today's discussion. So welcome everyone. And alrighty, so you know what, Paul, if you could start off with your introduction, that would be wonderful.
Well, certainly, Cindy. And again, really thank you for inviting Forte to come participate inside of this seminar and give an opportunity to share, again, some of our views as we're working very hard to go through and transforming the modern workplace. My name is Paul Miller. I'm the Director of Integration Operations. And part of what we like to do is, again, working with our customers and really driving things forward to go through and improve upon the situations that they had in communications. And a large part of that, as we get working with it, is inside the corporate world. But as this session is going to go through and explore is, again, how does that apply to other places? Because when we talk about modernizing the workplace, we really are talking about for everyone. Everybody has a different workplace that they're inside of. And so there's lots of opportunities to go through and work with Forte on those.
Great. Thank you. And Joe.
Hey, Cindy, thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure. My name is Joe Way. I am the Executive Director of Digital Spaces at UCLA. What that means, again, great title, tells you nothing about what I do. I oversee all the audiovisual teams across the enterprise, really for our general classrooms, conference rooms, live event spaces, digital signage, security, et cetera, and the teams that fall under that, as well as I am the co-founder of HETMA, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance, which is an advocacy organization of just under 7,000 global members, where we advocate for those tech managers at other institutions. And of course, I am a proud founding member of the Cindy Davis fan club, which is my favorite part of all I do.
Founding and only member.
you know what? We're strong, though.
We are. We're very strong. Thank you for that, Jason.
Thank you, Cindy. Hi, my name is Jason Young. I'm the Director of Sales for North America for Sony, for the Professional Display Solutions Group. Been in the commercial AV display space for almost 20 years now, all of that being on the manufacturing side. I have the unique privilege of working with a team across North America of sellers and engineers focused on Sony's professional display portfolio. So what does that mean? Pro Bravia displays, so everything from a 32 to a 98. Our business projectors, PTZ cameras, which are integrated with AI, auto framing and auto tracking, and then our CLED product, which is our direct view LED solution. So it's a great opportunity to be here, Cindy. I appreciate you having us here, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Great, thanks, Jason. And Brian, you're up.
Thank you for helping pull all this together, and look forward to having a great conversation. I'm Brian Emerson, Regional Manager here in the Southeast with Barco. I've had that role for the last 10 years. The last 3 years, I've been in the immersive experience division of Barco. I've been with the manufacturer in AV as a regional for over 30 years. I'll leave it at that for now. And what immersive experience is basically, like it sounds, it's developing products that lend themselves to immersive collaborative learning environments. And one of the ways we do that is a 3D cave, where we can create the 3D that you can walk into with 3 walls and a ceiling or a floor or some of those or part of those surfaces get up inside that image without the use of glasses so that you can collaborate with others and with the space. And they use that a lot in automotive industry for looking at 3D renderings of parts. Medical schools are starting to adopt the technology. Other places on campus, we end up as large venues with we do digital cinema projectors. So those larger venue projectors, image processing. And then recently we did come out with our first classroom projector, a little 25, 30-pound product called a G50, which is HETMA approved. And it's got some different features that we don't have on the bigger stuff. Variable audio out in case you want to run the audio through the projector, which can help save budget. It's more of a value product. And we also make it available in a white chassis, because we've never really done that before, but nobody really wants a black projector hanging up against the white ceiling tiles. So kind of exciting to end up in the classroom space as well.
Great. And honestly, who would think, black chassis versus white chassis, but it's important, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And I've worked at a lot of companies over the years, and I tried to tell them we're going to need white chassis if we go into this space.
Right. Funny. Very good. Well, thank you. Thanks for everyone for joining us. We're going to have a great conversation. So, as Joe mentioned, he's been on many of my panels, but in particular, I invited him to this panel because some colleges and universities, such as UCLA, have a larger footprint than many enterprises, but they do have some unique needs for unified communications and collaborations. Offices, they still have offices and meeting spaces for administrators and instructors that must be equipped for collaboration across the campus, and some worldwide. So, also, there's public spaces that are often used for ad hoc lessons, video walls and wayfinding, have become a staple on many campuses. And we're also going to discuss the role of AI in UC technology. So let's get to it. We're going to start off by asking each of you some of the trends that you're seeing when it comes to UC&C across the higher ed campus. And Brian, I want to come right back to you. If you could start off, that would be great. And I'm going to ask each one of you.
Sorry, trends in the UCC space. One of the things I've noticed recently is some chatter on message boards at ETC or HETMA, where people are asking colleagues at other universities, gee, we're starting to rent out this space for meetings. And with all these collaborative learning spaces that have been built for use in the academic environment, a lot of those spaces are the same exact type of spaces that a corporation might want to have a meeting in. So recently, I noticed we had a business school here in commercial Buckhead in the Atlanta area. One of my local integrators in Atlanta had their offsite planning meeting, their annual meeting, and they rented a space on campus at the B school to host, have their meetings in that space. And I think that's becoming something that's being done more and more.
Interesting. Well, I definitely want to dive into that a little bit later. Jason, if you would.
Sure. I think, and focus on UC&C, but also kind of probably even a broader perspective, is more so the standardization within higher education. I think historically, there's been a lot of decentralization and departments and even down to the building doing their own thing. Where you've got teams now like Joe's at UCLA or others across other universities that are the point person for all of these solutions across the board, so that there's consistency from a support standpoint, and there's a consistency from an experience standpoint. So you're really trying to drive that standard. And then I'm not going to steal the thunder from future questions, but really leveraging the AI aspect of things where, specifically around our products with the AI auto tracking on the cameras, as staffing requirements and availability becomes limited, using those AI functionality to kind of help augment some of that, kind of free up some resources to do other things, has been a trend happening over the last probably 12 to 18 months. So
interesting. So Joe, not only from UCLA perspective, but as the co-chair, or actually whatever your title is now at HETMA, you've got, you're talking to those folks every day. So what are some of the big high-level trends that you're seeing?
Yeah. This is already, Brian and Jason really kind of nailed the two main ones. But what we're really seeing is this move in higher ed for everything to be like it is standard across an enterprise. Like everything has to be a space now. We can't just look at the 200 conference rooms we might have, and that's our collaboration space. No, every classroom, every multi-purpose space, public spaces, all the way down to dining and hallways now have to be areas where we can essentially be able to hold a meeting, host people, have our spaces be able to work for whatever that use is, right? And so that shift means we have to be standardized across, we have to be scalable across, we have to support across our enterprise. And those are really the shifts that we're seeing no matter what. And I think that really means that everything we do has to be able to work for us, and be able to work for us remotely, get rid of SneakerNet, et cetera, right? Those types of things.
And, as we can tell, there's technology is still a challenge, and we're getting some reverb somewhere. So as much as possible, we're going to try to do some muting and unmuting. And I know that doesn't add for fluid conversation, but we're going to try here. Sorry about that. Alrighty. So, and Paul, certainly from an integrator perspective, you see a wide range of different universities. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing?
Well, one of the more interesting trends that's coming up inside of the collegiate environments is the meeting or the meeting space and stuff like that is honestly just the beginning. In other words, there's a continuation that goes on after that inside of it. In the past, it was, okay, I have a recording, I can go look at this. But there is so much more now that's coming through it's inside of here, whether it be, again, what are the other activities or actions inside of this that are coming up? What is the takeaways? What are other documents, other things that are relative to it? They're now literally part of that entire meeting that's taking place inside of there. So as that is expanding inside of here, we're seeing a lot of different trends and things like that that really go through and expand what was maybe a 1 hour meeting inside of here now turns into things that you're doing all week long.
Interesting. So actually, I'll come back because I want to talk, Joe mentioned even hallways. Really? That's crazy. I heard that during the pandemic. It's interesting to hear that that's still the case. But anyway, so I want to, the first question I'm going to ask really needs to be addressed because even though you guys will probably say, well, of course, but all too often I'm still hearing that an AV team will get in and the walls are up and they weren't consulted. So let's go over this. When planning a meeting in collaboration spaces, frankly, any of your spaces, who should be brought in and when? Whether it's the vendors, integration, external integration, internal IT, security. Joe, you deal with this day in, day out. Please start off with this.
Yes, all of them. All of them are important. One of those things that, as far as when, we used to always complain, especially in higher ed, all the walls go up, everything is done, and then the email comes in, oh, by the way, we need AV in here. And great, thanks. And where are we going to put it? That thankfully has actually started to change, right? What we are seeing, and it almost goes along with the trends, is the alignment with IT departments. If we look at AV teams over the course of the last 5 years, alignment with IT probably was only about 20% or so. I would say it's probably closer to 75% now. We're getting a move away from being under teaching and learning and under libraries to now being aligned with IT, which is correct, right? That is where we want to be. And for that means that we're starting to make those relationships with our general contractors, with capital construction, with those teams early, because for some reason people like to think, okay, IT, you have to have infrastructure come in. We know we have to get Wi-Fi. And now that we can have a voice with that, which is where I'm blessed at UCLA, because I sit at that level where every meeting that comes through, I hear about it. Now it allows me to decide, do I need to be part of this or not? Or which team do I need to send this to? And that's where, as early as we can get in, and I even mean before something happens, right? It's making those strategic, alignments with executive leadership to go, once someone has the idea that I might want to do X, Y, Z, Well, that email has to come through the ticketing system to say, by the way, put this on your radar. This may be coming through, to build a plan for it. Because what happens is when they come into us late, obviously we're tearing up walls, we're costing money, we're costing time, and we're also having to kick a lot of things down the road as we've become, especially if we look at UC from the point of an enterprise. Well, we're very network heavy, right? We are very pulled into that. So I can't just all of a sudden go, oh, by the way, I need, 16 more, network drops in this room, and not think that I'm kicking the can down the road to another team that should have known this and be able to plan this ahead of time, because we're no longer self-contained spaces, right? We're not just, 4 walls makes a classroom, go in there and let, keep it off from the rest of the world. When you think about cybersecurity, especially when you're opening up ports to the outer world, right? You have to have these teams come in, check out these equipment, make sure that what we're doing is secure. So we have to be able to be in and not even get that. I mean, even to look at, I bet a piece of equipment at any of our higher institutions cannot hit that network without passing some type of third-party review from our cybersecurity teams, right? Those things take time as well. And to be able to do that, and to the point about, you laughed about hallways. I just saw on LinkedIn, I think it was today, the Ohio State University has a database of not just classrooms, but places where you can study, and there's hallways on there. And check these things out, because that's our student body, right? Our students today live on these cell phones, tablets, computer, right? They are not stuck in a dorm room or a library. And in fact, and if we don't plan that, we don't plan that they need to be able to do everything everywhere, and everyone be able to do that and do that equitably, then we're actually failing the student body. And that's why we need to actually look at things from an enterprise point of view, because we never know what that next thing's going to be. And we also, in reality, we can't just go throw new buildings up everywhere anymore. That's how we would used to be able to add classrooms, right? You just found a nice $100 million donor. Yeah, threw up another building. Well, we're in Beverly Hills. Turns out, it's kind of expensive to do that here. So where can I use existing spaces where students are already wanting to hang out, and can we equip those in order for it to be effective for them? And that's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think from the manufacturing. Go ahead, Paul.
But one thing I was going to point out also is, again, there's an economic factor to this. As Joe said, Beverly Hills is not inexpensive, but let's look at the economics in general for all of us that we deal with inside of this. If we're, as AV, on the outside coming in inside of this, there are so many conversations and opportunities with the architects and things like that that can come into play that actually would save them money in the long run and probably turn out a better product at the end of the day. That it's, again, getting those people involved inside of this really goes through and helps out the end result, which is the experiential side of it. We're able to go through and get more accomplished, possibly with less money. And so I think that's really another important factor as we start looking at this. How can we start driving that forward? Again, getting into those conversations sooner and earlier with those architects and with those designers as they're conceptualizing these things. Because, again, staying on top of this is not easy. All of us sit here every day trying to go through and keep up to date with what's happening and the trends and things like that inside of this. So again, we multiply that by the factor of what we can bring to the table and help get better results. Seems like a real natural place for us to go through and contribute.
Yeah. From the manufacturing side, and Paul hit on the head, we have a very strong focus on that consultant, architecture, design community, and really making sure that we're in lockstep with them as they're on the front end of projects, because a lot of times the manufacturer isn't always brought in early enough. We're brought in at some point, but usually after a lot of decisions have been made, a lot of discussions have been had. So we need partners like Forte or the consultants and architects to really understand what we bring to the table and what differentiates maybe Sony from others, to have us be part of that conversation. But then secondarily, I think, as you look at what a manufacturer brings to the table, especially if we're talking projects year, 18, 24 months down the road, we have visibility into future roadmap development, right? There might be products that we know are coming or they're in development that might be perfect for this opportunity, but aren't an actual solution today, that we can contribute to that conversation and help navigate those what ifs, or could we, do this kind of a scenario, having that being able to be part of that conversation sooner in the process.
Yeah, I want to second everything Jason said. It's just like the integrator, architect, everybody that's involved. When you're the manufacturer, the earlier you be involved, the better. And sometimes that's direct communication with the institution. Sometimes it's a consultant. Sometimes it's, well, now we've selected the integrator and then we'll let them go talk to the different manufacturers, which is by definition probably going to put us a little bit behind the curve a little bit. But basically it's staying in touch with the community, in touch with the consultants, and just making sure they understand what some of the different things, technologies that we have that we can bring to bear, and understand how that could fit in that experience that they're trying to design.
Absolutely. Great, Nick, because I know, I've had these conversations all the time. I mean, a lot of manufacturers will work directly with end users, even though they've of course gone through integrators, and it's really an overall partnership. So next up, I want to talk about defining the experience. So it's, we, of course, as you can imagine, we all had a conversation earlier to kind of shape today's conversation, and it's like defining the need, or is it defining the need or the experience? It's really both. So let's start off, discussing that experience that these meeting and collaboration spaces should deliver. What are the needs, and are they different considerations that might be in an enterprise? So Paul, if you can kind of come back and start us off with that'd be great.
You bet. And I would have to say that there's basically a lot of commonality between, again, what we're talking about in that school environment and the enterprise environment of what they're looking inside of here. Because the first question I always ask people is, what's your perspective? Where are you coming from? Are you at home? Are you in the space? Where are you relative to all these different things? And as Joe said, you can live on the small screen, and guess what? You're about anywhere now. And so by the same token, as you're going through and doing this, the information is so important to you. The things that you're seeing, hearing, and such along the way, you have to be able to go through and have that meeting equity that takes place inside of it, because we've all had that experience of being sort of on the outside, but I really want to contribute, or I have something to say inside of this, and I don't feel like I can. That's the big thing that we want to go through and keep working very hard to go through and remedy inside of this as we're working on this. And that happens, again, in all of these industries that we're talking about. People do want to be seen and heard inside of this as they're going through and really engaging inside that communication process. So as we start looking at this, we really have to go through and lean into some different dynamics and some different ways of doing it. The room space has turned out to be something very different for that individual who's sitting 20 inches away from the screen and the person who's 50 feet away from that screen. They both need the same experience at the end of the day. So therein lies some of the challenges of what we want to go through and deliver inside of it. But I think it's the new expectation that everybody who's consuming this stuff is expecting. Much the same as what you talked about with turning on the closed captioning. A whole nother angle that we've seen coming into this in the open caption space has become another critical piece of how we go through and communicate inside of here. So it seems like a small thing, but if we're making an improvement inside of what we're doing, that's, again, leverage that we want to go through and keep building upon as we go forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of double click down on that too, because I think, a lot of what we look at, and we, as we start kind of re-examining our space types, right, is if I'm sitting in a conference room of some sort, what do I want to do? I want to present content. I want to be able to see someone, and I want to be able to hear people. That's it, right? If I go to a classroom, what do I want to do? I want to present content, I want to see people, and I want to hear, right? If I want to go to a large multi-place, what do I want to do? It's the same thing. Nothing actually changes of what I actually want to accomplish, regardless of the space that I'm in. Again, I might need more of something, more microphones, more display, more whatever, or less of something, but that's just the SKU that changes, right? And not the actual experience. And I think that's where we want to start as AV professionals, kind of re-examine this, not jumping straight to, okay, this is our standard, whatever we use. Now, maybe we're going to standardize on a platform or standardize on whatever, but going from that, and it's why I don't even like the words needs analysis anymore, because what do you need? If I ask 10 people what they need, I'm going to get 20 different answers. And next thing I know, it's the most expensive thing I've ever designed. But what I want to say is, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to experience? What do you want either the FAR users or your people in with you to experience? They're going to say, well, I'm going to experience putting something up and I want them to see it and I want them to hear it. Okay, great. Now let me run the math on the size of the space, et cetera, and be able to come up with the solution that fits that, right? And what we're now seeing, I guarantee you that just about now, everyone in some form now needs to think, I'm always going to have someone on a far end. Even if I don't, I might need to record it Why? Because I can't do closed captioning and I can't do digital accessibility, which is now a rule, especially the state of California here. For us, that digital accessibility has now taken over, and I have to, even if I'm not doing a remote call, I might have to record and transcribe, and I will go down here. You can bring me on a year from now. And I will say within the next 12 months, I wouldn't be surprised if at a federal level, we had digital accessibility laws that hit the books, right? Which now means that's a line item we're going to have to be adding. And that now requires us to be able to capture things. And that means high quality audio capture, because as noted, if it's not going to actually transcribe and or let's go to translate at the percentage quality that we actually require it to, right? And so that is the experience that our students, our faculty, everyone here is expecting, right? And when you're doing that, that's why we have to start kind of planning on that and going, okay, what is that experience? How do I answer that? And then you leave it to the technicians to decide what the model numbers, the numbers, and all of that to make it work. And I think that's the change we really want to see, and getting away from, walking in and throwing the SKUs down first.
I just have to say that when you're collaborative needs analysis meeting, my favorite person in that process is the one who's costing you the most money. So I love that person.
Hey, money's no object when you have none, right?
It's yeah.
When somebody else's budget.
Easy when it's somebody else's budget, right?
Yeah. So let's now move into, what are some of the technologies, and because there's, Joe, as you mentioned, it's becoming a thing in California where you have to record. However, we're seeing it where I work, and most people are seeing meetings being transcribed, meeting minutes being taken, action items coming from that. So this whole agentic AI, it's going. I think, frankly, next year it's going to become much more prolific, whether it's a law in California or not. We're already starting to see it. So, and I think it's going to, it's being embraced more. The technologies that are installed are going to have to really embrace that as well. Like you mentioned, audio. But let's talk about some of the auto tracking. Right now, many classrooms, a professor might be already used to going in and having auto tracking cameras and audio follow them. Is that the same case in your meeting spaces? Do administrators expect that as well? So let's talk about some of those technologies. Jason, if you want to lead off with that, what kind of technologies are going into these spaces?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of been touched on already on a couple of the other questions, right? Is there's a level of expectation when you walk into a space. And as Joe mentioned, right, students today have grown up with a phone, a tablet, and there's, I think back to, when phones and tablets kind of first started proliferating, and people would walk up to a screen on a wall and want to touch it because it should be interactive. So there was this expectation that, well, every display or every screen I should be able to interact with, and that's not always the case. So it's really making sure that expectation is met. So in a smaller meeting space, do you necessarily need an auto tracking camera? Probably not, because I don't think somebody's going to be walking around the space. However, you do want to have something that is mapping, especially if there's multiple people in that space and then multiple people that may be remote, that as we talk about AI note-taking and things like that, being able to capture who is actually speaking in that space. Because if we're not identifying who that speaker is, when there are those action items or follow-ups after the fact, it's going to be attendee 1, attendee 2, and if people don't remember who said what, it's going to be real hard to know who has those action items. So having a setup in those and looking at those spaces strategically, making sure that if it's not an auto tracking camera that's tied to the audio, so that as somebody speaks, the camera pans to that person, that at least there's enough cameras in that space to capture the attendees in that room. Because again, I think that's where, back to Joe's point of, wanting to show something, see, speak and be heard, kind of a thing. So being able to do that as effectively and efficiently as possible with that auto tracking, even in the smaller spaces, I think we're going to see that become more and more important.
Joe, I want to ask a question relative to this of what you're seeing with professors today. Again, talking about the auto tracking and expectations inside of it. Are they actually expecting it, or is that something that is actually a training mechanism that needs to occur for people who are going to be in front of the camera or leading inside of the space?
Yeah, a great question. I would say yes and no. There's the whole breadth of an answer for you. No, I think it's one of those things. I think about tracking. Um, it's one of the. I would have put it a while ago in the nice to have, but I think once you experience it, and I always look through the lens of accessibility. I always do, right? And when you look at, for example, I'll say with the Sony cameras are fantastic at leveraging an auto tracking that smooth captures, follows, does body rather than facial recognition, right? There are certain things that allow for you to get a better quality. Because again, if I'm that student who's sitting in the back of the room and maybe I'm going to only end up watching it through the recording later, I need to be able to capture that and see that, right? I would say in the past, yes, just blanket and do a front of the room capture and record was probably good enough. I don't know that that's the case anymore. And I also think the technologies are getting to the point where we can be able to have those at really no more cost than the standard one we had at not too long ago. I mean, even going into a UC space, I mean, look at Zoom itself now does camera tracking off of whatever webcam is plugged in, right? So even the softwares are able to now start giving us those features without the extra hardware. And then we're seeing great hardware also come with those native as well. And I think granted, the manufacturers are the ones on the call that can answer this better than me, but I also think we're still really early. Like, it's good now and much better than it used to be, but I still think we're very early. And I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I'll do another crystal ball. 12 months from now, we're already seeing some camera manufacturers do auto producing and auto cuts. And I think we're going to see that even better in the next 12 months. And that's really where it matters. That's where we can start getting a high quality product, but not just for the reason of having a high quality product, but for accessibility, to actually serve the person who needs to get that, that end result. So there was a long answer to your short question.
I was up on that.
Well, yeah, no, I think I think there's actually, not to kind of let the cat out of the bag, but there's, to Joe's point, there's some things that we're working on from an AI switching standpoint that is software cloud-based that will allow a multi-camera setup to look like more of a live production. And going back to the expectation of things where, there's been enough ever since, since COVID, we've all had a myriad of experiences with hybrid, remote, kind of these kind of experiences, and there's whether you're in the room or out, there's a level of expectation on the production side now as well, of not just, to Joe's point, the full front of house camera where that's all you got, and you got to try and work with that, where you can now do lower thirds, you can do different AI green screen type animations with whether it be presentations or other content. It can really become a true almost broadcast level production without the broadcast level expense and without the broadcast level number of resources required to produce something like that.
And I think that speaks very highly to, again, that inclusivity we've been talking about inside of here. Because again, when we go through and have cameras with imagers capable of doing very high resolutions inside of it, but I only need to extract a small piece of that out. Well, that's great, because maybe that student or somebody who's in the audience, whatever, asking a question, well, it'd be nice to know who that was and what they were saying inside of this, because it's not just what they're saying. We're also picking up on a whole lot of things that their faces inside of it. Did they understand the question? Did this excite them or anger them or something like that? That all plays into what's happening versus just that distant voice that we heard inside the conference, because maybe I'm remote to it and I'm not experiencing everything that's happening in that room. That's where, again, this technology that we're talking about becomes so important as we start building forward.
I was in an internal meeting at Barco for a product that'll get at ISE, which is a guy-assisted tracking, framing, switching camera type product. And they kept saying this is a corporate AV product. And that's all they ever said about it. And then they talked about what it's going to do conceptually. It's a new product. It's not out yet. And one of my counterparts chimed in the chat box and asked the question that I was thinking to myself the whole time, which is, why is this not higher ed? Why is it only corporate AV? And then they kind of they said to the guy who asked the question, well, is the use case there any different? And to Joe's point, and some of you guys have talked about it, it's not different. It's still the experience. You want to see people, hear people, understand what's going on in the room. And it's just a product that when you get to multi-camera without as many camera operators, that's kind of the gist of the product. And it sounds like it's being worked on in ours is going to be agnostic as far as which cameras and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was just interesting that it was, well, is that a different use case scenario? It's like, well, no, they're going to be delivering the same experience just on a college campus, right?
So, Brian, I want to bring up something that you mentioned earlier, how some universities actually, and I know Joe might have something to say about this. I mean, budget's tight everywhere, and there's been budget cuts everywhere, whether it's corporate or enterprise. And you mentioned that some universities are renting out spaces for corporate events. Mm-hmm. A great way to offset some of those budget cuts. So talk a little bit more about that. And Joe, are you also seeing that happen as well? And Paul, I'd love to open this conversation a bit more. What types of spaces are being rented out? What types of technologies are needed in those spaces if you're going to do that to really maximize the potential revenue that you can get?
There's one I've seen, and then another one that I've heard mentioned, but I haven't seen it. And the first one is the collaborative learning spaces, and that's again, if it's a functionality and an experience that you need to deliver in a collaborative learning environment, well, that's how corporate. That's the same thing. That's the same objective for the corporate customer, right? So if you've built this space, then you have it, and they can have access to it at certain times, and you should be able to charge for that. Not only the use of the space, but the use of the equipment, perhaps the person there helping them run the room and all that kind of stuff to deliver that experience. So that's the first one. The other one I've heard is the idea of creating, like in a business school in particular, a technical experience center or technology center where it's hands-on, and the business school students or the students at the school are being able to go in and get hands-on and use the technology and learn how to, function with it and take advantage of it. And then that is kind of, to me, analogous to like the corporate, what you call the experience center, right? Where you bring in the clients and you kind of have this technology on display in an environment where they can walk around, touch, feel it, see it in action. And so those are the two things that I've seen. I also think the 3D collaborate, the immersive spaces could also be an area, but I haven't really seen much of that yet.
Yeah, I would echo that. And by the way, we have to give a huge shout out to Sydney, Australia, in the house here today on the chat. So how about that? When you ask the question, what kind of spaces are being rented out to be able to use, the answer is yes. Everywhere is, right? And I think too, if we look at this through the lens of budget money, which I rather shift that from the lack of budget to how can I get better total cost of ownership over time and scale it, right? That's the conversation we need to have. And that's also the conversation you need to be having with your CFOs, because a lot of people see us as just a cost center. We're the people that come in and ask for expensive toys, right? And that is the idea that people often see. It's because we're saying, oh, I want cameras here, I want this. And by the way, everything we do is not cheap, right? But I think when you start looking at, I can't throw up new buildings all the time. Many schools are still fighting the loss of federal funding, right? We are at that enrollment cliff that we have been talking about for the last 8 to 10 years is now here, right? We also have the reality, a societal reality of wondering if higher education is even worth it anymore, and a move to trade schools. And by the way, as an integrator, here you go. Trade schools are where there's probably huge potential for right now, because that is a societal shift in our thinking. So when I go, okay, I have to deliver this experience to our students. They're expecting it. And you're the number one public institution in the country. They're expecting this, right? So I have to speak in terms of, I need investment into this space, every space, from the hallways to the meeting spaces, to the libraries, to the classroom, to everything has to be able to say, whatever someone wants to do, they can do it here. We don't need to build new buildings. Now, if they just need it for 20, 30 people, or if they need it for hundreds of people, they need it for 2. Giving them that opportunity says, okay, so I need a camera, I need a capture microphone, I need a speaker, I need some type of display mechanism, I need a click share so they can wirelessly share. That's it. That's what I got to do, right? And as long as I can do that, because again, a lot of BYOD, that people can move in and do into any spot, schedule that out. Gosh, when we talk about enterprise scheduling systems, monitoring systems, I mean, it just goes beyond that. But that's how I lower the total cost of ownership. Or take that, hey, reality is, sorry to this to our integrators and manufacturers, we're no longer talking 5-year refresh. We're talking 7, if not more, into 8. And a lot of schools, they go, oh, I never had budget to do it in less than that. Well, now even schools that might have budget are going, no, how can I do things so I can get more, so that I can bring these added features in? And those are the things we have to think about, right? And that's why I'm going to use enterprise management. I'm going to put an everything everywhere in some form, again, scale, so that every space can be for whatever I need it to be, right? And I think that becomes kind of the non-negotiable. And I go, a little advice to my hired people too is set with your academic senate, with your administrative leadership, and all that to say, what is the basic bottom line we want to be able to provide in every single space? I need to be able to capture it. I need to be able to share it. I need to be able to, record that type of stuff. Great. Then it just skews from there, right? But that also keeps those conversations to where my budget asks make sense.
Yeah, I would want to go through, though, and add on top of where you're going with that, Joe, especially if places are looking at, again, okay, how can I possibly turn this into revenue inside of it? A lot of it has to do with modality. How can I go through and make it into a mode of what I'm an operation of? And that exposes some of that technology inside this. And if you want more of that, well, then you can pay a little bit more and get that exposure inside of it. Very different to the people that are internal. Like Joe said, you want to have it available to everything inside of here. But if you're planning on running this as a paid service, that idea of being able to go through and at an enterprise level manage this, you need to be at basically the drop of the hat saying, well, we need to add on 3 more screens. We need to add 5 more microphones, all those kind of things like that. Boom, turn them on. And then again, that paying customer gets that experience and they're able to drive forward inside of it. That ecosystem, as you're building it out, becomes more and more important inside of here. And now you're going through and leveraging again, how is that building really running and managing itself so it can go through and create some of that revenue as you're going forward. Those are some of the new thought processes that are coming into play. But as you said, they've been in existence in corporate world for quite a while inside of here. So we're happy to share that with people.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. I've seen this shift where a lot of times, when classrooms are empty on weekends, there is a shift to, hey, wait, there might be a revenue opportunity here to host not just academic conferences, but outside conferences, right? Not that schools didn't do it, but I would definitely say there is a shift to thinking and going, you know what, maybe people don't have to, rent out the Hilton down the street. They can rent out our campus, and what kind of services can we provide? And, and we're seeing that. And, maybe it's taken this economic shift for, creative things like that to happen. So absolutely.
It's kind of a timely topic, and I'll apologize right now for the shameless plug I'm about to do. But perfect example, we're actually hosting an AV Tech Expo at UNLV next week. So we're taking our roadshow to their campus to bring in, and UNLV is a great customer for Sony, but to bring in other customers in the the Las Vegas market to see our new technology. So even as a manufacturer, we look at those spaces, because Joe, that was exactly what we did. We looked at a hotel and it was like, wow, that is really expensive. And again, partnering with UNLV gave us a great deal on their space and the support. So even as a manufacturer, we look to partner with our customers, using those kind of non-traditional spaces, if you will. So.
Joe, I know you're going to be a little busy with the Olympics next year, but actually, no, 2028, right?
28. Wait, what's that? I never heard of that.
Starts with what?
So yeah, talk about multi-use spaces. But interesting listening to this conversation because, as you know, we do the AVIT Summit, and we hosted it at WeWork last year. I know, sorry, it's off topic, but we hosted at WeWork last year. But they were perfectly set up, and higher education, I mean, colleges and universities are perfectly set up. So, extending that out and having corporate events there just seems like an absolute no-brainer, I think. We should be looking at some of the spaces, corporate higher ed spaces in New York for our event next year. Call me if you've got a great one. So let's switch the conversation to platforms. There's a myriad of platforms out there. And it seems like there's a new one every day. And that the role that AI is going to be playing. And we talked about this a little bit already, but how do you create that consistency? Especially the UC consistency, whether it's your meeting spaces within the campus, all the way to the classrooms. How do you create that unified experience? And Jason, can I ask you to start off with that, and then everybody join in, please?
Yeah, sure. And probably there's others that are probably a little bit more versed on this than I am, coming from the hardware side of things. But speaking specifically around the camera side of things, where I think, to Joe's point, right, we're just scratching the surface with what this camera technology is going to do from an AI perspective. Our AI enabled cameras haven't been out a great deal of time, but we've already had a handful of updates because of the immense amount of speed in terms of how those are evolving and how we're changing and being able to update that experience and that technology. But then if you look at the system platform, you start talking about Teams, Zoom, whatever it might be. I'm a little bit more versed on Teams as we use that in-house, but there's going to be, and probably already is, I think today, the camera switching inside that platform. There's also, when you start looking at AI note taking, right? We talked about that earlier, being able to capture what's being said without having to pen and paper it and make sure you capture it all. And the other piece that is starting to develop as well is, as more and more campuses are going global, being able to hold a collaboration session and do the auto translate in real time, where you might be able to be speaking in English, but it's the person in the campus in Tokyo is hearing it in Japanese in real time. That's here, right? And so being able, so that you want to talk about taking meeting equity to a whole nother level. It's truly exciting to see, and this AI space, not just in AV but across the board, is at an extreme rate right now of development, and trying to keep our hands around it and make sure that we're keeping it in check as best we can, but not also handcuffing the users in terms of being able to leverage the full power of what AI can deliver in these spaces and across the board. So.
Joe,
I think that.
Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. Is again, excellent points that you're making inside of this, Jason. And again, when we start looking at this from that enterprise lens and why they do certain things, one of the first questions they ask themselves is, when I'm picking this platform, is it something that is going to be, I can host and handle everything? Or do I pick something as a core and let everything on the edge possibly go through and then transform to what I'm doing inside of here? Because unlike the BYOD side of it with these small devices that we're talking about, BYOM is also, bring my own meeting, another option that comes into play inside of here. I think what people are going to find out very quickly when we start looking at this at that enterprise level is that you really do need to settle in on some sort of platform inside of here, again, to make all of these different technologies and things like that work in as seamless a possibility as possible. Now, it isn't exclusionary. That's the great part. We can go out to the edge and come in with something that's an alternate platform, still get into the experience and things like that. It may not be as fulfilling or as full, but you're not cut out by any means inside of it. But when we look at the simplicity of what that means now for the organization to go forward and really being able to go through and do the rollout and take advantage of everything we're talking about in said platform, that becomes, like I said, a really good conversation that you want to get into early on and understanding what's happening inside your organization.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I don't want to take away any of the the kudos from Chi and my team for case studies that will be coming out in the future. But one of the things that we're doing with our pilot is truly leveraging AI in a big way. And just to not steal their thunder, I'll say one thing AI does very well is serve as a great translator, and not just language translator, but a translate from one thing and talk in one product's language to talk in another project in its own language, right? True interoperability and being able to bring any feature, any need from any manufacturer or product, as long as it can, as long as the manufacturer's kind and opens up the APIs and lets us play well with them, we have an opportunity leveraging AI to make one seamless, holistic experience for the benefit of the people we are here to serve, right? And I think that's by leveraging it, we can do that. We don't have to get locked into said ecosystem. All ecosystems are great, fine, whatever. You don't have to be locked in. If going back to that, what is the experience you want? If I can find the product that can deliver that, I can leverage AI to make it work seamlessly without 2 more racks of equipment to make that one product work, which is what we used to have to do whenever we wanted the one exception. Well, that one exception can now really easily be done.
We're all going to want to know more.
Stay tuned. Hashtag stay tuned.
Listening to all that, where I see AI helping us, Barco, with our products, is in the monitoring and the control when the projectors are, or the displays are connected, or the ClickShare devices are connected to the network, then we can remotely monitor and control. And I could see AI being able to give more and more flexibility there and more predictability. Hey, not the lamp just blew on this, or this thing overheated, but hey, this is going to happen. Let's do a little preventative maintenance. I think it'll help with predicting that kind of service requirement, if you will.
Yeah. And also to recognize too that, cameras, microphones, displays are the eyes, ears, and everything of AI. We are the input devices to make everything happen, right? And that really goes to all the possibilities of building management, which is what we're looking at, and how to really control the enterprise. We can bring so much more service, especially to our facilities and capital programs and, building management programs, that as AV, we used to be a second thought. We can actually assist in that and actually make our campuses sustainable, make there's so much more we can do because we can be leveraged. We make the equipment and service the equipment that can, that actually can become actionable in those things that every campus has been talking about wanting to achieve. Which actually goes right into, as you know, the, kind of one of my final questions is, what about that bigger ecosystem in managing? Brian, you talked about the monitoring and managing, and of course, AV systems have been able to do that for years. But every 6 months, it seems like there's that new level, and AI is just added to that exponentially. So, where are we going? It's a little, prediction out there. Where are we going with the AI? And is this where the AV teams, from, we're talking about the whole enterprise. Is this where the AV teams really make their next mark?
I don't think there's a choice on this one. It is going to be making the next mark inside of here, but it has to go beyond what we call the simple automations. We now have to go through into the idea of this begets that, begets the other, and it keeps building on what we're talking about inside of here. That's where we're starting to see where AI is starting to get into this. The common term agents gets used a lot of times. Now think about that running around and, again, contributing into what's happening inside of it. It learned what was occurring in the meeting. It saw the results that people are trying to achieve. It's working now to go through and drive us in that direction. How do we go through and take what we're talking about in our technology as AV and marry that all up into what we're talking about into, again, that bigger system, and how that's going to go through and communicate and work together to go through and achieve said results. And on top of that, for less money and faster. We want to go through and that compounding has not changed over all these years of what we're talking about. So the idea of where we're going to be coming in here as AV professionals and AV contributors to what's coming forward inside of this. That embracing of what's happening inside of here and really understanding you have to take the next leap beyond automation inside of this and really lean into what is going to be possible inside of AI to go through and grow what's going to be achievable by your organization.
Absolutely.
100%. To add to that too, it's funny because we talk about, what's one of our biggest shows, integrated systems here. We have the integrated experience association, right? We are truly able at this point, and this has really only been this last year or so, or 2 years, we truly can be integrated into an entire campus system and I look at this as building and smart city systems. And AV actually has a true role that we can play in it and not just be peripheral devices within it, but be the eyes, ears to actually control it and maybe even leverage it because there's so much we can do. I mean, we haven't touched with automation, right? If we're talking enterprise, what about automation? What about looking at UC where it recognizes who the person is because their phone is connected into their enterprise system and they walk in, the room already knows, oh, this person walked in. I see that your next meeting is at 2:00 and it looks like you want to call this person. When would you like to use? Oh, it's a Teams meeting. Done. Like we can do that right now. And it's not even future, but a couple of years ago, that was a pipe dream. Now it's downloading an app and it's possible, right? As long as we outfit our spaces with the right equipment, but now we can leverage the data that comes from those devices to be able to do so much more for our campuses.
Exciting times. So we're actually, speaking of time, we've got 4 minutes left. I would like to ask each of you if you had one parting thought, one takeaway for our audience, what would that be? I'm going to ask each of you, and let's start with Paul.
The first thing I'm going to say is, again, thank you so much for, allowing me to be here again. Sony, Barco for sponsoring this. A really pleasure in being part of it. What I want to say to folks is you're going to need to go fight. You're going to need to go fight to get into those meetings, get into those rooms early, and again, be part of the contribution of it. And the way you're going to be able to do that is by showing the value of what you bring to the table. By going through and taking the time to go show the demonstration of, again, all these things we've been talking about today, it will get you into those meetings much faster. It will get you to those results you're looking for. And again, be very fulfilling on how you're going to go through and deliver those communication platforms to people.
Great. Thanks. Joe?
Echo. Thank you, Cindy, for having me back. My parting thing is, we're at a really exciting time in technology and huge possibilities and a real shift to where us as AV tech managers can really have a true impact on our campuses. That being said, it is mid-December. Unplug, take care of yourself because we're not good for our campuses unless we get the proper rest, turn off, and use this holidays. The next semester is going to come, but tune out, take care of yourself and your well-being because that's the only way we can be successful.
Hear, hear. I agree with that. Jason.
Well said, Joe. Well said. Thank you, Cindy, for the opportunity to be part of the panel today. Speaking from a manufacturer's perspective, I would say, along with our integration partners, look at your manufacturer partner as a true partner. Bring them into the conversation early. Don't hesitate to reach out and involve them in the conversation. Again, there's a lot of insight that we can bring to the table around, obviously, specifically our technology, but then other things that we've seen done potentially at other campuses, other universities that may play well in your space. So look at your manufacturer as a partner, not just a vendor of equipment and SKUs and products. We want to come to the table with you along with partners like Forte. To have those conversations, be a part of the conversation, and make sure that what ultimately gets deployed meets that expectation that we spent so much time talking about today.
Great. Thanks, Jason. And Brian.
I would encourage everyone to embrace the creative and fun part of audiovisual and AV, what we call this stuff. Recently, 2 years in a row now, we've loaned a Barco projector, a 40K, to the Ringling College of Art and Design. And they've had their final in their motion design class where they create projection mapping content. And the first year we projected onto the side of a building on their campus. And the professor had me and one of our engineers address and lecture his class as guest lecturers. I think they were bored to tears because he kept wanting us to talk to them about the nuts and bolts of projection. And these kids, these young people, these students are amazing, talented creatives. So I would just say embrace that part, look for the fun parts. This year we did it in downtown Sarasota, and they had an art walk where they block off part of the street. People mill around, and we shot across the street, top of one building onto another. And it was a lot of fun.
What a great way to end that. Fun. So from Joe, unplug and let's have fun. So thank you again, everyone, for joining me. Thank you for the chat. And Barco and Sony, thanks again for sponsoring. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you.